Hey, yo, yo, yo. It's me again. So, in this video, I figured, you know, I hope this doesn't time badly, but it is Scorpio season. And for me, Scorpio season is about penetrating beyond the surface or the surface level of any particular person, place, or thing. So, with that being said, I want to discuss what it is and what it means for me being asexual. And to my understanding, the textbook meaning of asexual, and I'll define it to the best of my ability without slaughtering the definition. But the textbook meaning behind being asexual is basically uh, the low interest, the low sexual interest in others. Well, basically, not being sexually attracted to others and having a low desire for any sexual activity and not really having basically any sexuality. So, um, with that being said, you just so you kind of get a at least a basic understanding of what we're about to discuss. With that being said, we're going to go straight in, as always, uh, and we're going to discuss my experience with being asexual and what it actually really means for me. And this may bring awareness to you and your situation. And you may be able to elaborate on this as well. Um, for me, I I beg to differ. Um, I remember just being in high school. Uh, I remember the first time I guess somebody wanted to hint to me that I had a problem, and it was a guy friend, and he decides to take the opportunity while we are in class in front of fellow classmates to say, "You don't really like sex, do you?" Well, he pretty much didn't question. He pretty much just, it was a statement. It was like, "You don't really like sex." And it was confusing to me. But I guess right now, I can look back on that and it kind of makes sense. And this was before I knew I was, because, um, yeah, at that time, I was participating. I was sexually active, but it's just a lot of misunderstandings behind the whole thing, and I kind of came to an understanding by initially believing that um, asexuality meant that I was just attracted to myself, and that I wasn't really attracted to people sexually. Like, that's not the first thing that I think about when I see you. You know, other things go through my mind when I first see a person, and it's not really sexually. It's not like it's not. It's per se. I'm just trying to get in your pants. I'm not. I'm not being like the dog. But let me let me further get into what we're talking about, asexuality, and what it really means for me. One thing I want to clarify is yes, you can be asexual and still be sexually active. It does not mean that you do not have any interest in sex at all. And it rather means that it takes more than just physical attraction. Like, even if asexuality meant that you're not physically attracted or you're not sexually attracted to people, me growing up under the me growing up how I grew up, like, you wasn't nobody, you're not nobody until you have sex with, until you know, you're knocking some of the baddies, you know, and that's just what it was, you know. So it, as far as I knew, being young, it was about like I that's how I knew that that's how I had my validation, you know. That's how I got my validation through who I was sleeping with. And, you know, I've always was like a ladies' man, but I still didn't know who I was, you know. So at times I believe like, oh, I'm just shy or something was wrong with me. But it all made sense one day, it all made sense. And this makes sense. I'm not saying I got it all figured out. But basically, although I was attractive and I was tall, I was athletic, and I can probably have every girl that I wanted. There's a twist, and the twist is I only went towards certain females that made me feel a certain kind of way. I only went that far with certain females who, uh, you know, kind of like stimulated me first, me mentally, or made me feel a specific kind of way. And I could see myself still being like that, you know. But it was happening on a subconscious level. That's my whole point in how I didn't know back then that was even a thing until I started to look within, you know, as cliche as that sounds. Um, so yeah, I started to like climb up there as far as my body count. Not saying I did hundreds of girls, but I was sexually active. And when I was sexually active, I pretty much would just have sex based off of mutual interest. But what I would learn is that I wasn't for everybody, and everybody couldn't have me. And one or two things happened. I'd either mess around with somebody based off of a specific kind of bonding, which was trauma bonding, or I'd find myself in imbalanced relationships with people that I probably had no business being around or with because I'm not knowing who I am and what I'm not knowing about self, let alone about what a real relationship is. Okay. Point two. Do I have sexual urges? And am I sexually attracted to people? Yes and no. Yes, I get sexual urges. Um, I'm still human. And I've already, I've always been, you know, I, I've always been like my sex drive has always been high. So that's not, it can't be true that asexuals aren't sexually attracted to others, but just not in the way of objectifying anymore. Like I can't just think with uh, my man's down there, you know. I can't, and I can't just have sex. I can, like you can. You can be asexual. You can just have sex just to please your partner, and mostly that's what it end up being. You know, you may do it just to please the person that you're with, but to me, um, for my needs to be met, it has to be stimulating my soul and my mind. Yes, I said my soul. There has to be a complete uh, exchange with the soul, like, or you basically just just there. You basically there in the act. Um, Also, me being asexual, like sex is not enough to keep me satisfied because you know sex is not the 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 goal, like the optimum end goal anyway. You know, it's you know, like we can like really get lost in other things, you know, like that aren't even sexual. And I guess that's where the misconception comes in, that because we may see somebody very attractive and we're not gawking and awing all over that person, that oh, you just must not be into sex. Like, isn't that something so shallow to even think to, to label somebody or to even say about a person? Like, oh, you didn't even mention sex in our first conversation. You must not be into sex. You didn't even you didn't approach me and you didn't give me any sexual innuendos in the beginning. So you must be some boring, low sex drive kind of person. That's that's so shallow. It's deeper than that, you know. Also, yeah, I can go long periods without having sex and not feel deprived. Like I said, we always have those sexual urges, and they're gonna always be there, especially when you know how it feels. Like that's just like, you know, you're out one time, or or someone comes over and they bake a cake, or they bake a good, they make you a baked good, or they make something from scratch. It could be a meal, it could be anything, and you've never had this meal before, but up until that day, like your whole mind has changed. Like you question your whole life. Like why? Where have you been all my whole life? That's kind of how it is when you've had good, you've had some passionate sex. Like who doesn't want to have any passionate sex? You may be turned off from sex, but I guarantee you, if you was to have sex with the right person who touches you in the right places, rubs you in the right ways, makes you feel, you know, important and valuable during those interactions, that can change your mind overnight. You can be somebody who hates sex because of your experiences. But it only takes that one time, that one person, the right person, or the right experience to change your whole life and mind. So, like I said, like, yes, I have those sexual urges due to the fact that I've had them before. I've had sex before. But before somebody came to me and said, hey, masturbate, it's good for you, or, oh, this is what it means to be cool, or this is what it means to be a man, to have sex with all these pretty bad biddies. It wasn't a thing, you know. I was just I was just a being, you know. But once I watched my first pornography movie, I was never the same. Hence is why like I had it was the circumstances in my upbringing in my early life that changed the variables of me my asexuality. You know, if you follow me, you understand what I'm saying. You know, but yeah, it's the sexual urges are always there. Like if I go a long enough time, I always be like, man, only if I could just find the right person to give all this sexual energy to. You know, I no longer want to just go out and belittle myself for pleasure, or to feel lesser than, just to please my sexual urge. Now that part is where I feel like asexual. That's the line where asexuals do not like to cross and will not cross. If they're not being manipulated or forced, if they have that freedom of choice to make that decision, they don't like to cross that line. So yeah, this is my video on being asexual, and what it means for me. Um, if you would like part two, go ahead and interact with this video and let me know that you like it and that you want part two.